"Search her!" The command echoed off concrete walls. 4 men closed in. Rough hands grabbed her collar. Fabric ripped. She stood there, trembling, just another helpless woman in a room with no windows, no cameras, no witnesses. Marcus Thorne smiled. His fingers reached for her waistband. "Get undressed," he whispered. "Now." 9 women before her had obeyed. 9 women had been destroyed in this room. But when his hand touched her skin, the trembling stopped. Her arm moved in a blur. Cold steel pressed against his forehead. "Federal officer," she said, "your turn to strip." Before we continue, I invite you to subscribe to our channel and follow this story until the very end. Drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this story travels. The room smelled like sweat and old fear. Vivian Reyes stood perfectly still in the center of what they called Zone 7. Her uniform jacket lay folded on the metal table, her belt coiled beside it like a sleeping snake. The fluorescent lights above buzzed with a rhythm that matched her heartbeat. Slow, controlled. The kind of calm that only comes when your body has been trained to turn terror into mathematics. Marcus Thorne circled behind her. 6'3", former Army interrogator. The kind of man who had learned to use silence like a weapon. His boots scraped against the concrete floor. Deliberate, loud enough to remind her he was there. "ID's still not syncing," he said, tapping a tablet that showed nothing but fabricated error codes. "That means we're cleared for secondary inspection." Kyle Brennan stood to her left, holding what looked like a security wand. Black plastic molded to resemble something official. It hadn't been powered in years. But he moved it with theatrical seriousness, sweeping it down her arms, her torso lingering too long near her ribs. Derek Vance leaned against the door, younger than the others, quieter, always positioning himself behind targets, always watching spines instead of faces. Ray Colton completed the formation, new to the team, eager to prove himself. His eyes hadn't left Vivian since she walked in. "Remove your boots," Thorne said. Vivian bent slowly, unlaced the left, then the right, placed them side by side beneath the table. Her movements were measured, procedural, like she was following an actual checklist instead of participating in theater designed to break her. "Jacket's already off," Brennan observed, as if discovering something new. "But we're going to need the undershirt too. Could be blocking the sensor." He said it like a mechanic asking for a hood to be popped. Casual. Routine. Vivian's fingers moved to the top button of her uniform shirt. She didn't hesitate. Didn't ask for clarification. Just unfastened it with the same steady rhythm she'd used to field strip a rifle in the dark. One button. Then another. Then a third. The shirt opened in the front. Plain black undershirt beneath. Regulation cut. Nothing that should have interested anyone conducting an actual security check. "All layers," Colton said from behind her. His voice had dropped lower. Intimate. "We need all layers off." Vivian stopped, held still for one full breath. Then she turned her head just enough to look at him over her shoulder. "Clarify," she said. Not a question. A command disguised as compliance. Colton grinned, thought it was submission, thought the single word meant she was breaking. So he leaned in, let his voice drop to barely above a whisper. "Get undressed. Now." The words hung in the air between them like smoke from a rifle barrel. Vivian's right hand moved to the hem of her undershirt. Slow. Deliberate. Her fingers brushed the fabric of her waistband as she began to lift it. To them it looked like nerves, a tiny tremor, a self-conscious gesture from a woman who didn't know what else to do. It wasn't. It was a trigger, a tactile pulse sensor no larger than a coin stitched into the inside of her waistband vibrated once, silent, sharp. A micro-device tied to a concealed body camera feed and encrypted uplink. Not to the base, not to local command, not to anyone on this continent. Straight to NCIS, straight to FBI headquarters, straight to the kind of oversight that didn't ask permission. A red indicator light, invisible to everyone but her, blinked once, behind the lining of her shirt, then disappeared. The room stayed the same. The men stayed the same. But the balance of power shifted like a ship taking water. "Search her," Thorne commanded, losing patience. "I don't have all day." Colton stepped forward. His hand reached for her waistband. Not to search for contraband, not to check for a weapon, just to claim the moment, to make the humiliation real. His fingers touched fabric, and then everything changed. Vivian's hand moved in a blur. The Sig Sauer P226 cleared the hidden holster in her waistband before Colton's brain registered movement. The muzzle pressed against Thorne's forehead with surgical precision. "Federal officer," she said, voice flat, cold, like reading coordinates from a map. "Hands up, all of you, now!" Colton stumbled backward, nearly tripping over his own feet. Brennan's security wand clattered to the floor. Vance's hand twitched toward his hip where his own weapon should have been. "Don't," Vivian said, shifting the gun's aim to him for a fraction of a second before returning to Thorne. "Your sidearm is secured with a retention holster. You'll be dead before your thumb finds the release." Vance's hand froze. "This is insane," Thorne said. His voice cracked. Actually cracked. "You're a logistics clerk. I'm Lieutenant Commander Vivian Reyes," she interrupted. "Naval Special Warfare Command. And you just committed attempted sexual assault on a federal officer conducting an undercover investigation." She let that sink in. On camera, with audio, streaming live to 3 separate federal agencies. The color drained from Thorne's face. Actually drained. Like watching a corpse being made in real time. "There's no camera," he said. "We checked this room. You checked the room's camera, the one that's been dead for 3 years. Vivian smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. "You didn't check me." Brennan's knees buckled. He caught himself on the table, but barely. "You're lying," Colton said. His voice was shaking. "You have to be lying. You're just a kid. You can't be 28 years old," Vivian said. "Youngest officer ever promoted to lieutenant commander in SEAL history. 12 confirmed kills in 3 deployments. And I've been hunting men like you for 6 months." And she reached into her back pocket with her free hand, pulled out a leather wallet, flipped it open with her thumb. The badge caught the fluorescent light. Naval Criminal Investigative Service. Special Operations Division. "Here's what happens next," she continued. "Federal marshals are 3 minutes out. Military police are securing every exit on this base. And the 3 of you are going to spend the next decade explaining to a judge why you thought ordering a Navy SEAL to get undressed was a good career move." Thorne's legs gave out. He slid down the wall, landing hard on the rubber matting. "My father-in-law," he whispered. "He's connected. He knows people. Undersecretary level. Flag officers. You can't. Victor Blackwell." Vivian tilted her head. "Interesting you mention him. FBI executed a warrant at Ironclad headquarters 45 minutes ago. Your father-in-law is currently handcuffed in the back of a federal vehicle, explaining why his company has been systematically assaulting female service members across 9 military bases for the past 3 years. Colton made a sound. Half sob, half whimper. "And Commander Sarah Hayes," Vivian continued. Your JAG contact, who's been burying complaints NCIS agents, are at her office right now. Her home. Her husband's office. Every email she's ever sent about resolving matters internally is being catalogued as evidence of conspiracy and obstruction of justice. Please, Brennan said. His voice was barely audible. Please, I have kids. Maya Ortiz had a family too, Vivian said. The flatness in her voice finally cracked. Just for a moment. Just enough to show the rage beneath. She was 24 years old. She filed a complaint about what you did to her. Your people told her she was unstable, scheduled her for another inspection, and she hanged herself 3 weeks later. Silence. Jennifer Walsh had a career, Vivian continued. Before you assaulted her and your JAG friend shipped her to Alaska within 48 hours to keep her quiet. More silence. Sloan Barrett, Mara Sinclair, Paige Thornton, Blair Henley, Ivy Callahan. Vivian's gun hand never wavered. 9 women at this base alone, 23 more across your network, some discharged, some reassigned, some just disappeared. She took a step closer to Thorne. And 1 dead. Because you made her believe that speaking up would destroy her. Because your system taught her that silence was the only way to survive. Thorne looked up at her. His eyes were wet. Not from remorse. From fear. What do you want? He asked. I want you to understand something, Vivian said. I could have done this differently. I could have let my backup handle the arrest. Could have stayed in the shadows and let the evidence speak for itself. She crouched down, bringing her face level with his. But I wanted you to see me. Wanted you to know that the little girl you thought was your next victim is the one who burned your entire operation to the ground. Wanted you to spend every night in your cell remembering this moment. She stood up. Because Maya Ortiz didn't get to see justice. She died believing that no one cared enough to stop you. The distant thump of helicopter rotors broke the silence. That's your ride, Vivian said. Federal Detention Center. No bail, no phone calls to Daddy's friends. Just you and a very uncomfortable mattress while the prosecution builds its case. The door burst open. 4 military police officers entered, weapons drawn, moving with the precision of a team that had done this hundreds of times. Zone 7 secured, the lead officer reported into his radio. 4 suspects in custody. Repeat, 4 suspects in custody. The MPs moved efficiently. Zip cuffs, Miranda rights. The whole procedure executed with mechanical precision. Thorne didn't resist. Neither did the others. The fight had gone out of them the moment Vivian's gun appeared. As they were led toward the door, Colton stopped, looked back at Vivian. How? He asked. How did you know about all of it? The complaints, the cover-ups, Hayes, everything. Vivian holstered her weapon. Because 9 women tried to tell you, she said, and you didn't listen. But I did. The MPs pushed him through the doorway. Vivian stood alone in Zone 7 for a long moment. The room where so many women had been broken. The room where silence had been enforced through fear and humiliation, and the crushing weight of institutional indifference. She looked at the dead camera in the corner, the one they'd trusted to keep their secrets. Then she looked at her own waistband, at the invisible device that had captured everything. This is Lieutenant Commander Reyes, she said quietly, knowing the transmission was still active. Target secured. Evidence confirmed. Beginning Phase 2. She walked to the table, retrieved her belt, her jacket, her boots, put them on with the same measured precision she'd used to remove them. Then she walked out of Zone 7. She didn't look back. The communications center was in the main building's 2nd floor, cramped room filled with radio equipment and computer terminals, the low hum of electronics running 24 hours a day. A young technician sat at the primary console. Early 20s. Navy uniform. Name tape read Chen. He was focused on a logistics spreadsheet coffee cup in one hand, stylus in the other. He looked up when Vivian entered. "Ma'am," he said, uncertain. "Can I help you with something?" Vivian placed her credentials on the desk. Chen's eyes went wide. "I need a secure channel," she said. "Priority 1, encrypted satellite relay to SOCOM headquarters." Yes, ma'am. Right away, ma'am." His fingers flew across the keyboard. Lines of code scrolled past. A green indicator lit up. "Channel secure," he said. "You're connected." Vivian leaned toward the microphone. "Admiral Cross," she said. "Phase 1 complete. All 4 primary targets in federal custody. Evidence package uploaded and confirmed. Awaiting further instructions." A pause. Static. Then a familiar voice. "Outstanding work, Commander. What's your assessment of remaining network exposure?" "Hayes is the linchpin," Vivian replied. "She's been routing every complaint through her office for 3 years. If her files are intact, we'll have documentation on every victim they've silenced. NCIS is executing the warrant now. We should have access within the hour." "There's something else, Admiral." Vivian hesitated. Rare for her. "One of the victims is still here. Corporal Jade Morrison. She was Thorne's most recent target before me. She's been living in fear for months, thinking no one would ever believe her." "What do you need?" "Permission to brief her personally. She deserves to know this is over, that her complaint wasn't ignored, that someone heard her." Another pause. "Granted. Take whatever time you need, Commander. You've earned it." The connection ended. Chen was staring at her, not with suspicion or confusion anymore, with something that looked almost like awe. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "the stories about Zone 7, what they do to women there, are they true?" Vivian met his eyes. "They were true," she said, past tense. She walked out before he could respond. The mess hall was nearly empty at this hour. Just a few personnel finishing late meals scattered across tables too far apart for conversation. Vivian found Jade Morrison in the back corner, alone, pushing food around her plate without eating, the look of someone who had learned to make herself invisible. Vivian sat down across from her. Jade's head snapped up. Fear flashed across her face, immediate, instinctive. "Don't," she whispered. "Please don't talk to me here. They watch. They're gone," Vivian said quietly. Jade froze. "What? Thorne, Brennan, Vance, Colton. They're in federal custody. Hayes is being arrested as we speak. Ironclad's entire operation is being shut down." Jade stared at her, processing, trying to decide if this was real or just another form of cruelty. "I don't understand," she said. "Who are you? You're not logistics liaison. You're Lieutenant Commander Vivian Reyes, Naval Special Warfare Command." Vivian reached across the table, placed her hand on Jade's. "I'm the one they should have sent the first time you filed a complaint." Jade's eyes filled with tears, not the quiet kind that slide down cheeks, the explosive kind that come from months of suppressed terror finally finding release. "They told me I imagined it," she said, her voice breaking. "They said I was seeking attention. They took my job, put me on cleaning duty, said if I kept talking they'd have me discharged for psychological instability." "I know," Vivian said. "I read your file, all of it. The original complaint, the cover-up. Everything Hayes did to silence you. She said no one would believe me, that I was just a corporal, that my word meant nothing against, your word meant everything," Vivian interrupted. "It's part of the evidence that's going to put these men in prison. You spoke up when it would have been easier to stay silent. That's not weakness, Jade. That's courage." Jade's hands were shaking. Her whole body was shaking. "There was another woman," she said. "Maya. She was going through the same thing. We talked sometimes, late at night when no one could hear. She filed a complaint, too. 2 weeks later, I know about Maya," Vivian said softly. "Her death is why I'm here. Her father was Navy. He served with people who still care about doing the right thing. When they found out what happened to her, they sent me." Is her father okay?" "He's flying in tomorrow. There's going to be a memorial service, full military honors. And he's going to know that his daughter's death wasn't meaningless. That because she refused to stay silent, 23 other women are finally getting justice." Jade wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "What happens now?" she asked. "To me? To the others?" "Your rank is being restored. You're being assigned to a new task force, one that's going to review every complaint that's been buried across all military branches for the past 5 years. We're going to find every woman who was silenced, every cover-up, every Commander Hayes who decided that protecting contractors was more important than protecting service members. And I can help with that. You can lead it," Vivian said. "If you want to. Captain Jennifer Walsh is heading the task force. She was one of Thorne's victims too before they shipped her to Alaska. She asked specifically for you to be part of her team." Jade sat very still for a long moment. Then something changed in her expression. The fear didn't disappear entirely, but something else rose up beside it. Something that had been buried under months of helplessness and despair. Determination. "I want to help," she said. "I want to make sure this never happens to anyone else." Vivian smiled. A real smile this time, not the cold one she'd shown Thorne. "Good," she said, "because there's a lot of work to do." By midnight, the base had transformed. Every ironclad contractor had been escorted off the premises. Every file in Hayes's office had been seized. Every computer, every tablet, every phone, all of it now in NCIS custody. Vivian stood at the perimeter fence, watching the last transport vehicle disappear into the darkness. Her phone buzzed. Admiral Cross. "Commander, we have a problem." Vivian's grip tightened on the phone. "Go ahead, Admiral." "Hayes's files. They're more extensive than we thought. We're finding connections to 3 other contractor companies. Different names, different structures, but the same operational pattern. Same systematic targeting of female personnel." "How many bases?" "At least 12 that we can confirm, possibly more." Vivian closed her eyes. 12 bases, hundreds of potential victims, years of cover-ups. "And there's something else," Cross continued. "One of those contractors' Sentinel force they're operating in the Middle East theater. Our sources indicate they may have connections to foreign intelligence services. If that's true, this isn't just a sexual assault case anymore. It's a national security threat. What do you need me to do?" A long pause. "I need you to go deeper." "Commander, Sentinel Force operates out of Forward Operating Base Phoenix near the Syrian border. We have reports of the same pattern, female personnel being targeted, complaints being buried, victims being silenced or disappeared. You want me to infiltrate another operation? I want you to finish what we started. Ironclad was just the beginning. If these networks are connected, if there's a larger system at play, we need to expose all of it." Vivian opened her eyes, looked out at the desert darkness. "When do I leave?" 48 hours. We'll create a new identity. New cover story. You'll go in as an IT specialist, low profile, unremarkable, the kind of person no one notices. Until they do. Until they do, Cross agreed. And Commander, these people are more dangerous than Thorne. They have international connections. They have resources. If they discover who you are before you have enough evidence... I understand the risks, Admiral. Do you... Because I'm not ordering you to do this. After what you accomplished today, you could request any assignment you want. Training, teaching, desk work. You've earned it. Vivian thought about Maya Ortiz, about the note she'd left, about the words that had started this entire investigation. They made me strip. They told me it was procedure. When I reported it, they said I was unstable. She thought about the 23 other victims they'd found at Ironclad's bases, about the 12 more bases that might be hiding the same horrors. She thought about the women who were still out there, still suffering in silence, still believing that no one would ever come. "I'll be ready in 48 hours, she said. "Commander, Admiral." Vivian's voice was quiet but firm. Maya Ortiz died because she thought she was alone, because the system she trusted failed her. I'm not going to let that happen to anyone else, not while I can still fight. Silence on the line. Then, understood. Briefing materials will be delivered to your quarters by 600. Get some rest, Commander. You've earned that too. The call ended. Vivian pocketed her phone, stood alone at the fence line watching the stars emerge over the desert. Somewhere out there in a base she'd never seen, women were living in fear. Women were being told that their voices didn't matter. Women were being broken by a system that had decided their suffering was an acceptable cost of doing business. They didn't know she was coming. They didn't know that the young IT specialist who would arrive in 48 hours wasn't a victim waiting to happen. She was the storm. And storms don't ask permission. 46 hours later, Vivian Reyes stepped off a military transport onto cracked tarmac that shimmered with heat forward. Operating Base Phoenix sat in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by sand and silence, and the kind of emptiness that made people forget the world existed beyond the wire. She carried a single duffel bag, wore glasses she didn't need, had her hair pulled back in a plain ponytail that made her look younger than her 28 years. Her ID badge read Specialist Emma Chen. Information Technology, transferred from logistics support in Germany. Nobody important, nobody worth noticing. That was the point. The gate guard barely glanced at her credentials before waving her through. He was Sentinel Force, private contractor. The patch on his shoulder showed a black eagle clutching a sword. His eyes moved over her body the way a butcher examines meat. IT support, he asked. Server maintenance, Vivian replied. Kept her voice soft. Uncertain, the voice of someone who had never held a weapon. You're young for this posting. I go where they send me. He smiled. Not a friendly smile. Welcome to Phoenix, sweetheart. Try not to get lost. Vivian ducked her head, mumbled a thank you, walked past him without making eye contact. Inside, she was already cataloging. Gate security, 2 contractors, 1 military. Shift rotation probably 8 hours. Camera coverage, 3 visible, likely more concealed. The guard's sidearm standard issue retention holster, right hip. His partner's same configuration. She'd memorized the base layout from satellite imagery. Main administrative building to the north, barracks to the east, communications center adjacent to command. And tucked away in the southwest corner, a nondescript structure labeled Processing Center B. That was where they did it, where the complaints originated, where women walked in and came out different. The briefing materials had been clear. 17 complaints filed from this base in the past 18 months, all routed through a single JAG officer, all resolved internally. No investigations, no follow-ups, same pattern, different predators. Her first day was reconnaissance. She kept her head down, answered questions with monosyllables, let people assume she was shy or stupid or both. She watched. The female personnel avoided certain corridors. The contractors congregated near the processing center during shift changes. There were looks exchanged when women passed, smiles that carried warnings, and there was a name that kept coming up, whispered in corners, spoken with the kind of fear that had teeth. Colonel Nathan Rourke, not a contractor, active military, base commander. That was new. That was dangerous. At Ironclad, the corruption had been contained to civilian personnel. Contractors who could be arrested, prosecuted, imprisoned without touching the military chain of command. But Rourke was different. Rourke wore the uniform. Rourke had stars on his shoulder and 30 years of service and connections that reached all the way to Washington. If he was involved, this wasn't just a contractor scandal anymore. This was rot at the core. Vivian found the first victim on her second day. Specialist Dana Webb, 24 years old, former intelligence analyst, currently assigned to inventory management in the supply warehouse. The demotion pattern was identical to Jade Morrison's. High-performing soldier suddenly transferred to menial duties. No explanation, no formal reprimand, just a quiet exile to a job that would slowly destroy her career. Vivian approached her during a quiet moment in the warehouse, crates of equipment surrounding them. No witnesses. "I know what happened to you," Vivian said quietly. Webb's head snapped up. Her eyes went wide with the particular terror of someone who had been trained to fear. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Processing Center B. The secondary inspection. Rourke and his team." Webb's face went pale. Her hands started shaking. "Who are you? Someone who's going to stop them." "You can't stop them." Webb's voice cracked. "Nobody can stop them. Rourke has protection. The contractors work for him. The JAG officer works for him. Everyone works for him." "Not everyone." "You don't understand." Webb grabbed Vivian's arm. Her grip was desperate. "The last woman who tried to report him, Private First Class Amy Reese, she disappeared. 3 weeks ago. They said she went AWOL, but I saw her the night before. She was terrified. She said she had evidence. She said she was going to—" Webb stopped, looked around. The fear in her eyes had intensified. "Going to what?" Vivian pressed. She had video, on her phone. She managed to record what they did to her. She was going to send it to someone outside the base, someone she trusted. "What happened to the phone?" "I don't know. She's gone. The phone's gone. Everything's gone. And now you're asking questions and they're going to find out. And, Dana..." Vivian's voice was calm, steady. The voice she used when soldiers were panicking under fire. "Look at me." Webb looked. "I'm not a specialist from Germany. I'm Lieutenant Commander Vivian Reyes, Naval Special Warfare. I took down an operation just like this one 3 days ago. 17 arrests, full federal prosecution. And I'm going to do the same thing here." Webb stared at her. The fear didn't disappear, but something else crept in alongside it. Hope. "They're worse here," Webb whispered. "Rourke is worse than any contractor. He doesn't just assault women. He enjoys it. He makes them thank him afterward, makes them say they wanted it. And if they don't, what? Amy didn't. She fought back. And now she's gone." The words hit Vivian like a physical blow. Gone didn't mean transferred. Gone didn't mean discharged. Gone meant something else entirely. "Where would they take her?" Vivian asked. "If she didn't cooperate? If she had evidence they needed to destroy?" Webb's eyes flickered toward the east, toward the empty desert beyond the wire. "There's a place," she said. "About 20 clicks out. Old abandoned compound from the First Gulf War. Some of the contractors go there sometimes. Late at night. They don't talk about what they do. Vivian felt something cold settle in her stomach. This wasn't just assault anymore. This might be murder. She needed to contact Admiral Cross, needed backup, needed resources she didn't have access to on this base. But first she needed more information, needed to understand the full scope of what she was dealing with. "Is there anyone else?" she asked. "Anyone who might have documentation records? Anything that proves what Rourke is doing?" Webb hesitated. The internal battle was visible on her face. Fear versus hope. Self-preservation versus justice. Finally, she spoke. "Lieutenant Sarah Castellano. She's the base medical officer. She's been documenting injuries. Women who come in with trauma that doesn't match their explanations. She's been keeping records. Secret records. Can you introduce me to her? She doesn't trust anyone." "She'll trust me." Webb studied Vivian's face for a long moment. Whatever she saw there seemed to convince her. "Tonight," she said. "After midnight, medical bay, come alone." Vivian nodded. She started to turn away, then stopped. "Dana. The woman who disappeared, Amy Reese. You were friends with her?" Webb's eyes filled with tears. "She was my roommate. She used to talk in her sleep after it happened. She'd beg them to stop. Every night. And I couldn't do anything. I couldn't help her. I couldn't." Her voice broke. "You're helping her now," Vivian said quietly. "By talking to me. By being brave enough to speak when everyone told you to stay silent." She left Webb standing among the crates. A woman who had been broken but not destroyed. A woman who had chosen to fight even when fighting seemed impossible. One more name for the list. One more voice that would be heard. Medical bay. Midnight. Lieutenant Castellano. The pieces were starting to come together, but Vivian couldn't shake the feeling that she was running out of time. The medical bay was quiet when Vivian arrived. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The smell of antiseptic hung in the air like a chemical fog. Lieutenant Sarah Castellano was waiting for her. Late 30s. Silver streaking her dark hair. The kind of face that had seen too much suffering and refused to look away. "You're the IT specialist," Castellano said. "Not a question. I'm the one who's going to shut this place down." Castellano studied her for a long moment. Then she laughed. Short, bitter. "You're either very brave or very stupid. I've been called both. Dana vouched for you. Said you took down a similar operation stateside. 17 arrests, including the CEO and the JAG officer who was covering for him." Something shifted in Castellano's expression. A crack in the armor she'd built around herself. "Follow me." She led Vivian to a storage room in the back. Unlocked a cabinet that looked like it held medical supplies. Inside, hidden behind boxes of bandages and syringes, was a metal lockbox. Castellano opened it. Inside were files. Dozens of them. Photographs of injuries. Handwritten notes. Interview transcripts. Medical records that documented patterns of trauma. 3 years, Castellano said. 3 years, I've been collecting evidence. 3 years, I've been watching women come through my medical bay with injuries they can't explain, with fear in their eyes they can't hide. She pulled out a file, handed it to Vivian. "This is Amy Reese, 22 years old, private first class. I treated her 3 times in the past 6 months. Bruising, lacerations, signs of sexual assault. She told me everything. Gave me names, dates, locations." Vivian opened the file, read the clinical descriptions of violence, the medical photographs that documented what words couldn't capture. Her hands tightened on the paper. "Where is she now?" "I don't know. Castellano's voice cracked. She came to see me 3 weeks ago. Said she had video evidence. Said she was going to contact someone on the outside. Someone who could help. Did she say who? A journalist. Someone she'd met online who specialized in military corruption stories. She was going to send him everything. The video, my records, all of it. And then she disappeared. The next morning, her bunk was empty. Her belongings were gone. The official report said she went AWOL. But Amy would never do that. She loved the army. She believed in service. She would never... Castellano stopped, pressed her hand against her mouth, fighting for control. I think they killed her, she whispered. I think they found out what she was planning and they killed her, and they're going to get away with it because no one will ever know. Someone will know, Vivian said. I'll make sure of it. She started photographing the files with her phone. Each image uploaded automatically to the encrypted server at NCIS headquarters. Evidence that couldn't be destroyed. Evidence that couldn't be buried. There's something else, Castellano said. Something you need to know about Rourke. Vivian looked up. He's not just running this operation. He's selling it. What do you mean? The contractors, Sentinel Force. They're not just providing security. They're providing access. Women, girls sometimes. Not just military personnel, local nationals too, refugees from the border camps. Vivian felt the blood drain from her face. Human trafficking. I've treated some of them, the ones who needed medical attention before they could be used. Young women, teenagers, brought in at night, treated quietly, then taken away. The scope of what Vivian was dealing with had just expanded exponentially. This wasn't just sexual assault. This wasn't just corruption. This was an international trafficking operation running under the cover of military authority. Admiral Cross's words echoed in her memory. If there's a larger system at play, we need to expose all of it. She had found the system, and it was worse than anyone had imagined. I need to contact my superiors, Vivian said. I need extraction teams, FBI, international authorities. You can't use base communications, Castellano warned. Rourke monitors everything, every call, every email. Every message that leaves this base goes through his systems. I have secure channels. Not secure enough, not here. He has people in places you wouldn't expect. The last person who tried to contact the outside world was Amy. And she's gone. Vivian's mind raced through options. Satellite phone would be detected. Encrypted radio could be intercepted. Any electronic communication risked exposure. There was only one way to get a message out that Rourke couldn't intercept. She had to get out herself. Is there a way off this base that isn't monitored? Castellano hesitated, then nodded slowly. Supply convoy. Leaves every Tuesday at 400. Delivers to a forward position about 40 clicks west. From there you could reach the border. Contact your people directly. Today was Monday. I'll be on that convoy. You can't come back, Castellano said. Once you leave, Rourke will know something's wrong. He'll lock down the base, start hunting for whoever talked. Then I'll bring backup when I return. Vivian met her eyes. You've been collecting evidence for 3 years, waiting for someone to listen. I'm listening, and I'm not going to let these men hurt anyone else. Castellano's composure finally cracked. Tears spilled down her cheeks. There are so many, she whispered. So many women I couldn't help. So many who came through my medical bay with broken bodies and broken spirits, and I just documented it. I just wrote it down and filed it away and hoped that someday... That day is today, Vivian said. You kept those records when it would have been easier to look away. You risked everything to protect evidence that everyone wanted to destroy. That's not nothing, Lieutenant. That's everything. She packed the most critical files into her bag, the ones she couldn't photograph. the ones that would prove the trafficking connection. "What about the others?" Castellano asked. "Dana Webb, the women who are still here. What happens to them when Rourke finds out what we've done?" "I'll send help before he has time to react. 24 hours, maybe less. I just need to reach my people." "And if you can't?" Vivian thought about the question, thought about what failure would mean, not just for her, but for every woman on this base. "Then I'll die trying," she said, "because living with the alternative isn't something I can do." She moved toward the door, stopped. "Lieutenant, one more question. The abandoned compound Dana mentioned, the place where they take women who don't cooperate. Do you know what happens there?" Castellano's face went gray. "Bodies," she said quietly. "Some of the local workers have talked. They've seen things, graves in the desert, trucks that go out full and come back empty. How many? I don't know. Nobody knows. That's the point." Vivian absorbed this information, filed it away alongside everything else: murder, trafficking, systematic assault, cover-ups reaching into the highest levels of military command. This was bigger than Ironclad, bigger than anything she'd faced before. And she had less than 8 hours to get off this base and call for help. She stepped out of the medical bay into the night air. The stars overhead were bright, cold, indifferent to the horrors happening beneath them. Somewhere in the desert there were graves, women who had been silenced permanently, women whose names might never be known. Vivian walked toward the barracks, her mind already planning the next 12 hours. Supply convoy at 0400, 40 kilometers to the forward position. Border crossing. Secure communication to Admiral Cross. Then she was coming back, with every resource the United States military could muster, and Nathan Rourke was going to learn what happened when predators met hunters. The night was quiet. Too quiet. Vivian's instincts, honed by years of special operations, were screaming that something was wrong. She reached the barracks. Her hand touched the door handle. "Specialist Chen." The voice came from behind her. Male. Commanding. Cold. She turned slowly. Colonel Nathan Rourke stood 10 feet away. 2 Sentinel Force contractors flanked him, both armed. "Colonel," Vivian said, kept her voice steady. "Can I help you, sir?" Rourke smiled. It was the smile of a man who had never been denied anything he wanted. "I've been meaning to introduce myself," he said. "New personnel don't usually arrive without me knowing about it. But you slipped through somehow. Very unusual." "I was transferred from Germany, sir. Routine assignment." "Nothing about you is routine specialist." He stepped closer. "I've been watching you. You don't walk like IT support. You don't talk like IT support. You watch people like someone who's been trained to assess threats." Vivian felt her pulse quicken, but she kept her face blank. Innocent. "I don't know what you mean, sir." "I think you do." Rourke gestured to his men. "Search her." The 2 contractors moved forward. Vivian's hand drifted toward her waistband, toward the concealed weapon that had saved her once before. "Sir, this is highly irregular. I have a right to—" "You have no rights here," Rourke interrupted. "This is my base, my rules. And I want to know exactly who you are and why you're asking questions about things that don't concern you." He knew. Somehow he knew. Webb had been followed. Castellano had been watched. The careful web of surveillance Vivian had tried to avoid had caught her anyway. The contractors grabbed her arms. Rough hands. Practiced efficiency. They'd done this before. One of them reached for her waistband. Vivian had a choice to make. Fight, now blow her cover, potentially die in a confrontation she couldn't win, or endure whatever was coming and wait for a better opportunity. She chose option 3. Her knee came up hard into the first contractor's groin. As he doubled over, she grabbed his head and slammed it into the second man's face. Both went down in a tangle of limbs and profanity. Rourke's hand went to his sidearm. Vivian moved faster. Her weapon cleared leather before his fingers touched the grip. The muzzle found his forehead with the same precision she'd used on Marcus Thorne. "Don't," she said. Rourke froze. For the first time since she'd seen him, something other than arrogance crossed his face. Fear. "Who are you?" he whispered. "I'm the woman who's going to end you," Vivian replied. "The only question is whether you're smart enough to live through it." She kept the gun steady. Behind her, the two contractors were groaning on the ground, but they wouldn't stay down long. She was outnumbered. Outgunned. On hostile territory with no backup and no extraction plan. But she'd been in worse situations. And she'd always found a way out. Rourke's eyes moved past her. His expression changed. Shifted from fear to something that looked almost like amusement. "I don't think you understand your situation," he said. Vivian heard boots behind her. Multiple sets, moving in from all directions. She didn't turn. Didn't take her eyes off Rourke. "You're surrounded," he continued. "Even if you shoot me, you'll be dead before my body hits the ground. And then everything you've learned, everything you've documented, dies with you." "Maybe," Vivian said. "But you'll still be dead." Rourke studied her face, reading the truth there. She would pull the trigger, without hesitation, without regret. "What do you want?" he asked. "I want to know where Amy Reese is." Something flickered in his eyes. There and gone. "Who?" "Don't." Vivian's finger tightened on the trigger. "I know about the compound. I know about the graves. I know about the trafficking operation you're running through this base." "You don't know anything. I know enough to end your career, to put you in prison for the rest of your life, to make sure everyone you've ever hurt gets justice." Rourke laughed. Actually laughed. "Justice," he repeated. "You think anyone cares about justice? I have friends in the Pentagon. I have friends in Congress. I have friends who will make sure this conversation never happened, and you never existed." "You had friends," Vivian corrected. "Victor Blackwell, Martin Schaefer, Patricia Wells. They all thought they were untouchable too." The names hit him visibly. His jaw tightened. His eyes narrowed. "That was you," he said. "The ironclad takedown. That was you." "That was me. And this will be me too. The only difference is whether you're alive to stand trial or dead in this courtyard." The boots had stopped moving. Vivian could sense men positioned around her, weapons trained on her back. Stalemate. But stalemates don't last forever. Something had to give. "Colonel." One of the contractors had recovered. He was standing now, blood streaming from his nose hand on his weapon. "Give the word, and we end this." Rourke held up his hand. His eyes never left Vivian's. "Not yet," he said. "I want to understand something first." He took a step closer, then another, until the muzzle of Vivian's gun was pressing into the center of his chest. "You could have waited," he said quietly. "Could have gathered more evidence. Could have extracted safely and come back with an army. But you didn't. You confronted me directly. Why? Because Amy Reese deserves to know someone came for her." "She's dead," Rourke said flatly. "Buried somewhere you'll never find her, along with everyone else who tried to be a hero." The words confirmed what Vivian had feared, what she'd known in her gut since Donna Webb told her about the disappearance. Amy Reese wasn't missing. Amy Reese was murdered. "Then I'll make sure everyone knows her name," Vivian said. "I'll make sure the world knows what you did, And I'll make sure you spend every day of the rest of your miserable life knowing that a 22-year-old private was braver than you ever were. Something dangerous crossed Rourke's face. "Kill her," he said. Vivian pulled the trigger. The bullet caught Rourke in the shoulder. Not the heart, not the head. The shoulder. Vivian had adjusted her aim at the last millisecond. A kill shot would have been easier. Cleaner. But dead men don't stand trial. Dead men don't confess. Dead men don't lead you to the bodies of the women they've buried in the desert. Rourke spun backward, screaming. Blood sprayed across the dusty ground. His hand clutched the wound as he fell, eyes wide with disbelief. Nobody had ever shot him before. Nobody had ever dared. The contractors behind Vivian opened fire. She was already moving, rolling left using Rourke's falling body as momentary cover. 2 rounds whipped past her head close enough to feel the heat. A third grazed her arm, tearing fabric and skin. She came up firing. 2 shots. 2 contractors down. Center mass. The training kicked in without conscious thought. Muscle memory built over 12 years and 3 combat deployments. A third man rushed her from the right. She pivoted, drove her elbow into his throat, felt cartilage give way. He collapsed, gasping, drowning on dry land. More boots, more shouts. The whole base was waking up. Vivian grabbed Rourke by his wounded shoulder, dug her fingers into the bullet hole. He screamed again, higher this time, the sound of a man who had never experienced real pain. "Where are the graves?" she demanded. "The compound in the desert. Where is it? You're dead," he gasped. "You're already dead." She twisted her fingers. He screamed louder. "Coordinates, now!" 23 clicks east. Old refinery. You'll never... She slammed her pistol grip into his temple. He went limp. 15 seconds had passed since she pulled the trigger. In another 30, this courtyard would be swarming with armed men who wanted her dead. Vivian ran. Not toward the gate. That would be locked down by now. Not toward the barracks. Too many people, too many witnesses. She ran toward the motor pool. The supply convoy was scheduled to leave in 5 hours. She wasn't going to wait that long. 2 guards stood at the motor pool entrance. They saw her coming. Started to raise their weapons. Vivian shot the first one in the leg. He went down screaming. The second one hesitated just for a moment, just long enough. She closed the distance in 3 strides, grabbed his rifle by the barrel. Twisted. The weapon came free. She reversed it, slammed the stock into his jaw, felt bone crack. Keys. She needed keys. The guard she'd shot in the leg was trying to crawl away. Vivian crouched beside him, patted him down, found a ring of keys on his belt. "Which one starts the Humvee?" "Go to hell." She pressed her thumb against his wound. He screamed. "Which one? Silver, silver with the red tag." She found it. Stood. Started toward the nearest vehicle. "You won't make it," the guard gasped behind her. "The gates are locked. Checkpoint's been alerted. You're trapped." Vivian didn't answer. She climbed into the Humvee. Key in ignition. Engine roared to life. She wasn't heading for the gate. The motor pool shared a wall with the ammunition depot, and the ammunition depot had been built against the base's outer perimeter where the fence was chain link instead of concrete. Vivian floored the accelerator. The Humvee lurched forward, tires spinning on gravel. She aimed for the gap between 2 storage containers. Narrow, barely wide enough for the vehicle. Metal screamed as she scraped through. Sparks flew. Her side mirror shattered. Then she was past the containers, accelerating toward the fence, toward the ammunition depot's exterior wall, toward the chain link that separated the base from the desert. She hit the fence at 40 miles per hour. The chain link tore like paper. Posts ripped from concrete. The Humvee bounced over uneven ground, nearly flipping, then found traction and kept moving. Behind her, alarms wailed. Searchlights swept the darkness. Voices shouted commands she couldn't hear over the engine noise. She was out. She was free. But she wasn't running away. She was running toward. 23 clicks east. Old refinery. The place where Rourke buried his victims. Amy Reese deserved to be found. They all did. The desert swallowed her. Stars overhead. Sand in every direction. The base's lights growing smaller in her rearview mirror until they were just aglow on the horizon. Vivian checked her phone. No signal. No way to contact Admiral Cross. No way to call for backup. She was alone. But she'd been alone before, in situations far worse than this, and she'd survived. The old refinery appeared on the horizon just as dawn began to break. Rusted towers, collapsed structures, the skeleton of an industry that had died decades ago. She parked the Humvee behind a concrete barrier, killed the engine. Sat in silence for a moment, listening. Wind, sand shifting, the creak of metal in the distance, nothing else. She climbed out, weapon drawn, moved toward the refinery in a low crouch. Checking corners, clearing structures. The training so ingrained it felt like breathing. She found the graves behind the main processing plant. 7 of them. Shallow depressions in the sand, some newer than others. All unmarked, all forgotten. Vivian stood there for a long moment, looking at the places where women had been buried like garbage. Women who had served their country. Women who had trusted the system to protect them. Women who had been failed in the worst possible way. She thought about Amy Reese, 22 years old, private first class. A woman who had fought back. A woman who had tried to expose the truth. A woman who was probably lying right here beneath her feet, silenced forever. "I'm sorry," Vivian whispered. "I'm sorry I didn't come sooner." She took photographs of each grave, documented the GPS coordinates, uploaded everything to her phone's memory, ready to transmit the moment she found a signal. Then she heard the helicopters. 2 of them, coming from the west. Sentinel Force markings on the side. They'd tracked her. Of course they had. The Humvee probably had GPS. She should have known. Should have been more careful. Vivian ran for cover. The helicopters swept low over the refinery, searchlights cutting through the dawn, voices on loudspeakers commanding her to surrender. She found shelter in a collapsed building. Concrete walls, limited sight lines, defensible position. But defensible didn't mean survivable. She had 1 pistol, maybe 30 rounds. They had helicopters trained personnel, probably thermal imaging. This was going to end badly. Then she heard another sound, different from the helicopter rotors. Lower, heavier, military aircraft, multiple engines, coming fast. Vivian pressed herself against the wall and watched as 2 Black Hawks appeared over the eastern horizon. No Sentinel Force markings. These birds wore the insignia of the United States Army Special Operations Command. Her phone buzzed, signal restored. An incoming call from a number she recognized. Admiral Cross. "Commander Reyes, please tell me you're still alive." "Barely, Admiral. How did you find me?" "Your body camera. It's been transmitting this whole time. We've seen everything, heard everything. Rourke's confession, the location of the graves, all of it." Vivian felt something loosen in her chest. The evidence was safe. Even if she died here, the mission was complete. "There are 2 Sentinel Force helicopters circling my position," she said, "and I'm running low on ammunition." "Stand by. Cavalry's arriving." The Black Hawks roared overhead. One of them positioned itself between Vivian and the Sentinel Force birds. The other touched down 50 meters from her position. Soldiers poured out. Real soldiers. Army Rangers. They fanned out, securing the perimeter weapons trained on the contractor helicopters. A familiar voice crackled over the loudspeaker. "Sentinel Force aircraft. This is Colonel James Wright, U.S. Army Special Operations Command. You are ordered to land immediately and surrender your weapons. Failure to comply will be treated as hostile action against United States military personnel." The contractor helicopters hesitated. Vivian could imagine the conversations happening inside, the calculations being made, fight or flight, victory or survival. They chose survival. Both aircraft landed. Contractors emerged with hands raised. Rangers moved in to secure them. A medic approached Vivian. Young woman. Calm eyes. Professional hands. "Ma'am, you're bleeding." Vivian looked down at her arm. The graze wound had bled more than she'd realized. Her sleeve was soaked. "It's nothing." "With respect, ma'am, let me be the judge of that." Vivian submitted to the examination. Let the medic clean and bandage the wound. Let herself feel for the first time in hours something other than adrenaline and rage. Colonel Wright approached. 50s. Silver hair. The face of a man who had seen too many wars and still believed in something worth fighting for. "Commander Reyes," he said, "Admiral Cross sends his regards and his congratulations." "The mission isn't complete," Vivian replied. "Rourke is still alive, still on the base, still being arrested as we speak. FBI and NCIS teams hit Phoenix 15 minutes ago. Multiple casualties among the contractor force. Minimal resistance from military personnel once they understood what was happening. The women, the victims, are they being evacuated? Every female service member on that base is being transported to secure facilities for medical evaluation and debriefing. Lieutenant Castellano is coordinating medical support. Specialist Webb is assisting with victim identification." Vivian closed her eyes. Let the relief wash over her. They were safe. Finally, safe. "And the graves?" she asked quietly. Wright's expression hardened. "Recovery teams are en route. We're going to find every woman Rourke buried out here. Give them proper identification, proper burial, proper notification to their families. Amy Reese, private first class. She was, we know. Castellano told us everything. Reese's parents are being contacted. They'll know their daughter died a hero, that she tried to expose this operation, that her courage helped bring it down." Vivian nodded. It wasn't enough. Would never be enough. But it was something. "What happens now?" she asked. Now, Wright almost smiled. "Now we burn it all down." The scope of the operation became clear over the next 72 hours. Rourke had been running his trafficking network for over 5 years, not just at Phoenix. At bases across 3 countries, dozens of women assaulted, at least 15 murdered. Hundreds of local nationals sold into slavery through connections that reached into organized crime syndicates across the Middle East. The arrest count grew by the hour. Contractors, officers, government officials who had looked the other way in exchange for money or favors or threats. A web of corruption so vast that untangling it would take years. But the center of the web was broken. Rourke himself was in federal custody, his shoulder wound treated just enough to keep him alive for trial. He had stopped talking after the first hour of interrogation. Lawyer present. Rights invoked. The smug certainty of a man who believed his connections would save him. They wouldn't. Vivian had made sure of that. The body camera footage had captured everything. His confession about Amy Reese, his admission that the graves existed, his order to kill Vivian. Every word, every action documented in high definition and uploaded to servers that couldn't be hacked, erased, or compromised. Even his friends in Washington couldn't bury evidence that half the intelligence community had already seen. 3 days after the Phoenix raid, Vivian stood in a hangar at Ramstein Air Force Base in Germany. 7 flag-draped coffins arranged in precise rows. The remains recovered from the desert graves finally given the dignity they deserved. Admiral Cross stood beside her. "You didn't have to come," he said quietly. "Yes, I did." The ceremony was brief. Military honors. A chaplain's prayer. The ritual words that soldiers had used for generations to mark the passage of their fallen. When it was over, Vivian approached the coffin at the end of the row, the one they had identified through dental records as Amy Reese. She placed her hand on the flag, felt the fabric beneath her fingers, thought about a 22-year-old woman who had refused to stay silent even when silence was the safer choice. "I found you," she whispered. "I brought you home. And everyone's going to know what you did, what you tried to do. You're not going to be forgotten." The coffin didn't answer. Couldn't answer. But Vivian felt something anyway. A sense of completion. Of promise kept. Amy Reese had died fighting, and her fight hadn't been in vain. Later that evening, Vivian sat alone in her temporary quarters. The adrenaline had finally worn off. The exhaustion had finally caught up. Every muscle ached. The wound on her arm throbbed despite the painkillers. Her phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. She opened it. "Thank you. From all of us. We know what you did. We know what it cost. And we'll never forget." The survivors of Phoenix. Vivian stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed a response. "You survived. That's not weakness. That's strength they couldn't break. Now go live the lives you deserve." She set the phone down, closed her eyes. For the first time in days, she slept without dreaming. The congressional hearing convened 3 weeks later. Vivian sat at a table facing a panel of senators and representatives. Cameras everywhere, reporters packed into every available seat, the whole world watching. Senator Margaret Chen, chairwoman of the Armed Services Committee, called the session to order. "Commander Reyes, you are here today to provide testimony regarding your investigation into criminal activity at Forward Operating Base Phoenix and related installations. Before we begin, I want to thank you for your service and your courage. What you've uncovered represents one of the most significant corruption cases in military history." "Thank you, Senator. But I didn't uncover this alone. The real heroes are the women who spoke up, who filed complaints, who documented abuse even when they were told it would destroy their careers. Women like Amy Reese, who died trying to expose the truth." Chen nodded. "The committee has reviewed the evidence you provided. Body camera footage, medical records, financial documents tracing payments from Sentinel Force to government officials. The scope is staggering." "Yes, ma'am. But this isn't just about one base or one contractor. This is about a system that failed, a system that prioritized convenience over justice, that silenced victims instead of protecting them, that chose bureaucracy over humanity. What do you recommend we do to prevent this from happening again?" Vivian leaned forward. 3 things. First, direct military oversight of all contractor operations. No more gray zones where civilian companies operate without accountability. Second, mandatory reporting protocols for any complaint involving assault or misconduct. No more internal resolutions. No more buried paperwork. Third, a victim advocacy program run by people who actually care. People who will listen. People who will fight. She paused. "But most importantly, Senator, we need to change the culture. We need to make it clear that speaking up is not a career-ending decision. That reporting abuse is an act of courage, not weakness. That the uniform means something. That the people who wear it deserve protection. The room was silent. Senator Chen spoke again, her voice soft. Commander Reyes, you put your life at risk to expose this operation. You were shot at, nearly killed. You could have waited for backup, could have played it safe. Why didn't you? Vivian thought about the question, thought about Amy Reese and the graves in the desert, thought about Dana Webb and Sarah Castellano and all the women who had trusted her with their stories. Because Maya Ortiz died alone, she said finally. Because Amy Reese died alone. Because for too long, women in uniform have been taught that fighting back means fighting alone. I wanted them to know that's not true anymore, that someone would come for them, that their voices mattered. She looked directly into the cameras. And I want every woman watching this to know something. If it happens to you, speak up. Document everything. Find someone you trust. And don't let anyone convince you that silence is the only option. Because there are people out there who will listen, who will fight for you, who will tear down walls and burn down empires to make sure you get justice. Senator Chen wiped her eyes. She wasn't the only one. Thank you, Commander Reyes. This committee will take your recommendations under advisement, and I give you my personal word that we will do everything in our power to ensure that no one else suffers the way those women suffered. The hearing adjourned. Vivian walked out of the Capitol building into the Washington sunlight. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. She didn't stop. Didn't answer. Just walked to the waiting car where Admiral Cross sat in the back seat. Well done, Commander, he said as she climbed in. Did it make a difference? The bill for contractor oversight reform is being drafted as we speak. The victim advocacy program you recommended is being funded. And as of this morning, 17 additional bases have opened investigations into buried complaints. Vivian leaned back against the seat. It's not enough. It's never enough. But it's more than we had yesterday. And tomorrow it'll be more than we have today. That's how change happens. One fight at a time. The car pulled away from the Capitol. Vivian watched the monuments pass by. The buildings where decisions were made that affected millions of lives. The symbols of a system that was flawed, broken, sometimes corrupt. But also a system that could change. That could be forced to change by people who refused to accept the way things were. Her phone buzzed. Another message. Commander Reyes, when you're ready, there's another operation we need to discuss. Different country. Same pattern. Same predators. We'll understand if you need time. But the women there don't have time. Cross. Vivian read the message twice. Then she typed her response. Send the file. I'll be ready in 48 hours. Because somewhere out there, in another gray zone, women were still suffering, still being silenced, still waiting for someone to come. And Vivian Reyes was still hunting. The federal courthouse in Alexandria, Virginia, became ground zero for what the media called the trial of the decade. Nathan Rourke sat at the defense table in his army dress uniform, stripped of rank insignia, but still wearing the medals he'd earned over 30 years. His shoulder had healed. His arrogance had not. Vivian watched from the gallery as the prosecution laid out its case. 47 counts. Conspiracy. Trafficking. Sexual assault. Murder. Each charge supported by evidence she had risked her life to obtain. The lead prosecutor was a woman named Catherine Torres, 50s, silver hair, the kind of lawyer who had spent her career putting away people who thought they were untouchable. The defendant, Torres said in her opening statement, believed he was above the law. He believed that his rank, his connections, his position of authority made him immune to consequences. He was wrong. Rourke's lawyer, a high-priced defense attorney named Marcus Webb, countered with the strategy Vivian had expected. My client is a decorated combat veteran, 30 years of distinguished service, and he is being persecuted based on the testimony of a single rogue operative who went outside the chain of command who shot an unarmed officer who took the law into her own hands. Vivian's jaw tightened, but she kept her face neutral. The camera was on her. The whole world was watching. The first week of testimony focused on the trafficking network, financial records showing payments from Sentinel Force to offshore accounts, communications between Rourke and organized crime figures, testimony from survivors who had been sold traded, used like commodities. One witness broke down on the stand. A young woman from a Syrian refugee camp who had been promised safety, promised work, promised a future. They told me I would have a job, she said through a translator, tears streaming down her face. They told me I would be safe. Instead, She couldn't finish. Torres let the silence speak for itself. Webb tried to establish reasonable doubt, challenged the chain of evidence, questioned the credibility of witnesses, suggested that Rourke had been unaware of what his contractors were doing. But the body camera footage was devastating. Vivian's recording played on screens throughout the courtroom, Rourke's voice clear and unmistakable, confessing to Amy Reese's murder, ordering Vivian's death, admitting to the location of the graves. Webb objected, claimed the recording was obtained illegally, argued that Vivian had entrapped his client. Judge Patricia Morrison, a former JAG officer herself, overruled him. The defendant was not compelled to speak. He was not coerced. He made voluntary statements in the presence of a federal officer conducting a lawful investigation. The evidence is admissible. Rourke's face went pale. The second week focused on the murders. 7 bodies recovered from the desert. 7 women identified through DNA and dental records. 7 families who finally knew what had happened to their daughters, their sisters, their mothers. Amy Reese's parents sat in the front row of the gallery. Her father, a retired Marine sergeant, wore his dress blues. Her mother clutched a photograph of Amy in her graduation uniform. When the medical examiner testified about the cause of death, Mrs. Reese had to leave the courtroom. Her sobs echoed in the hallway. Vivian found her during the lunch recess, sitting alone on a bench, staring at the photograph. "Mrs. Reese." The woman looked up. Her eyes were red. Her hands were shaking. "You're her," she said. "You're the one who found my daughter." "Yes, ma'am." "They told us she went AWOL. For 3 weeks we believed she had abandoned her post, abandoned her country, abandoned us." Her voice cracked. "I was so angry, so ashamed. I thought we had failed her somehow." "You didn't fail her. The system failed her. The people who were supposed to protect her failed her. But Amy never failed anyone." She fought back. She tried to expose what was happening. She died a hero. Mrs. Reese's tears flowed freely now. The prosecutor showed us her phone records, the messages she sent. She was trying to reach a journalist, trying to get the evidence out. She knew they were going to kill her, but she kept fighting anyway. "That's who she was," Vivian said. Brave, determined, unwilling to stay silent, even when silence was safer. "Will they convict him? That monster who killed my baby?" Vivian looked through the window into the courtroom. Rourke sat at the defense table conferring with his lawyers, still confident, still certain that his connections would save him. "Yes," she said, "they will." Mrs. Reese reached out, took Vivian's hand. "Thank you for finding her, for bringing her home, for making sure the world knows what she did." Vivian squeezed her hand, couldn't speak for a moment. The weight of that gratitude was almost too heavy to bear. "She would have done the same for me," she finally said. Any of us would. That's what the uniform means. The third week, Vivian took the stand. Torres walked her through the entire operation. The briefing at the Pentagon, the undercover assignment, the evidence she'd gathered, the confrontation with Rourke, the escape through the desert. Webb's cross-examination was brutal. "Commander Reyes, you shot an unarmed man. Colonel Rourke was reaching for his weapon. You claim he was reaching for his weapon, but the video shows his hand at his side. His hand was moving toward his hip, toward his holster, in a combat situation that constitutes a threat. A combat situation that you created. You were the one who drew first. You were the one who escalated a conversation into a confrontation. The conversation was already escalated when Colonel Rourke ordered his men to strip search a federal officer. Ordered them to search you, not strip search you. A routine security procedure that you— Objection!" Torres was on her feet. The prosecution has already established through multiple witnesses that the so-called security procedures at Forward Operating Base Phoenix were pretexts for sexual assault. Sustained. Webb tried a different approach. "Commander Reyes, how many people have you killed in the line of duty?" Vivian met his eyes. "That information is classified." "Is it more than 10 classified?" "More than 20 classified." "So you're a trained killer, someone who has been conditioned to use lethal force, and we're supposed to believe that you acted with restraint when you confronted my client." "I could have killed Colonel Rourke," Vivian said calmly. "I chose not to. I adjusted my aim at the last moment to wound instead of kill, because I wanted him to stand trial. I wanted him to face justice. I wanted the families of his victims to see him held accountable. Or perhaps you adjusted your aim because you knew a kill shot would make your narrative less sympathetic. Perhaps I spent 12 years serving my country, while men like your client used their authority to prey on the people they were supposed to protect." Vivian's voice hardened. "Perhaps I watched women I trained with get destroyed by a system that told them to stay silent. Perhaps I decided that enough was enough." The courtroom was silent. Webb glanced at the jury. Whatever he saw there made him change tactics. "No further questions." Vivian stepped down from the witness stand. As she walked past the defense table, Rourke caught her eye. "This isn't over," he whispered. "For you it is," she replied. Closing arguments came on a Thursday afternoon. Torres stood before the jury, her voice measured but passionate. "The defense wants you to believe that Colonel Rourke is a victim, a decorated veteran persecuted by an overzealous operative. But the evidence tells a different story, a story of systematic abuse, of women treated as commodities, of lives destroyed and ended to protect the profits of men who had sworn to serve their country." She pointed at Rourke. 7 women are dead because of this man, buried in unmarked graves in the desert, their families denied closure, their memories erased. And for what? Money, power, the thrill of domination. She turned back to the jury. Amy Reese was 22 years old. She had her whole life ahead of her. She believed in service, believed in honor, believed that if she spoke up, someone would listen. She was wrong. But her death wasn't meaningless. Her courage helped bring this monster to justice. And now it's your turn to finish what she started. Webb's closing was equally passionate. "My client served this country for 30 years. He earned medals. He led men into combat. He sacrificed his youth, his health, his family for the nation he loved. And what does he get in return? A show trial, a witch hunt, accusations based on the word of a single woman who admits she shot him without warning." He shook his head. "The prosecution wants you to convict Colonel Rourke because it feels good, because it satisfies the mob demanding blood. But feelings aren't evidence, and the evidence here is tainted, obtained through entrapment, recorded without consent, interpreted through the lens of someone who had already decided guilt before the investigation began. He looked at each juror in turn. If you convict this man based on this evidence, you're not delivering justice. You're participating in a lynching, and the next person on that rope could be any of us. The jury deliberated for 18 hours. Vivian spent that time in the courthouse cafeteria, drinking bad coffee, checking her phone, waiting for the verdict that would determine whether everything she'd done had meant something. Admiral Cross called twice. She didn't answer. Dana Webb texted from the new assignment she'd been given at the Oversight Task Force. "We're watching. We're praying." Sarah Castellano sent a message from the medical facility where she was treating Phoenix survivors. "Whatever happens, you gave us hope. That's not nothing." Amy Reese's father found Vivian just before the jury returned. "Commander." She stood, saluted. Old habits. "At ease," he said. His voice was gruff, marine tough, but his eyes were soft. "I wanted to thank you, before the verdict comes in. Whatever happens in there, you did right by my daughter. I wish I could have done more. I wish I could have saved her. You couldn't. Nobody could. Amy made her choice. She knew the risks. She chose to fight anyway." He straightened his shoulders. "That's what we taught her. That's who she was. And thanks to you, the world knows it." The bailiff appeared at the door. "Verdict's in." The courtroom was packed, standing room only. Every seat filled with reporters, family members, survivors, observers, who wanted to witness history. Vivian sat beside Mrs. Reese, who gripped her hand like a lifeline. Judge Morrison addressed the jury. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" The forewoman stood. Late 50s, gray hair, the face of a grandmother who had seen enough of the world to know its darkness. "We have your honor. On the count of conspiracy to commit human trafficking, how do you find the defendant guilty?" Mrs. Reese's grip tightened. "On the count of human trafficking, how do you find the defendant guilty?" A murmur rippled through the courtroom. "On the counts of sexual assault, how do you find the defendant guilty on all counts?" Rourke's face was ashen. His lawyers were whispering urgently, but he didn't seem to hear them. "On the counts of first-degree murder, how do you find the defendant?" The forewoman's voice was steady. "Guilty on all 7 counts." The courtroom erupted. Mrs. Reese collapsed against Vivian, sobbing. Mr. Reese stood at attention, tears streaming down his weathered face. Survivors embraced each other. Reporters shouted questions. Judge Morrison banged her gavel. "Order, order in the court!" The noise subsided slowly. "Colonel Nathan Rourke, you have been found guilty on 47 counts, including 7 counts of first-degree murder. Sentencing will take place in 30 days. You are remanded to federal custody without bail." Marshals approached Rourke. He stood slowly, like a man who couldn't believe what was happening, like a man who had been certain of his invincibility until the moment it shattered. As they led him away, he turned, found Vivian in the crowd. "This isn't justice," he said. "This is revenge." Vivian met his eyes. "No," she said. "This is accountability. Something you should have learned 30 years ago." They took him away. The courthouse steps were chaos. Cameras, microphones, reporters shouting questions. Vivian stood beside Admiral Cross, waiting for the crowd to thin. "You did it," Cross said quietly. "Rourke, the contractors, the officials who covered for them, all of them going down. We did it. Everyone who spoke up, everyone who testified, everyone who refused to stay silent. The president wants to award you the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Public ceremony. Full honors." Vivian shook her head. "Give it to Amy Reese. Posthumously. Give it to the women who survived Phoenix. They're the heroes. I'm just the one who happened to be holding the gun. Cross studied her face. What do you want then? You've earned whatever you ask for. Assignment? Promotion? Retirement? Name it. Vivian thought about the question, about what she wanted, about what she needed. I want to keep hunting, she said. I want to find every gray zone, every predator, every system that's been built to protect abusers and silence victims. I want to tear them all down, all. That's a lifetime of work. Then I'll spend a lifetime doing it. Cross nodded slowly. There's an operation in Southeast Asia. Contractor company called Pacific Shield. Same pattern, different continent. Female personnel being targeted. Complaints being buried. Victims disappearing. When do I leave? You just finished one of the most grueling missions in special operations history. You were shot, nearly killed, put through a congressional hearing and a 3-week trial. You don't want to take some time. See your family. Rest. Vivian looked at the courthouse behind her, at the building where justice had finally been served. The women at Pacific Shield don't have time for me to rest. They need someone now. They need someone who will listen, someone who will fight. She turned to Cross. Send me the file. I'll be ready in 48 hours. Cross smiled, sad but proud. I'll have the briefing materials delivered tonight. Vivian walked down the courthouse steps, through the crowd of reporters, past the cameras, and the questions, and the chaos. She didn't look back. There was work to do. There would always be work to do. As long as there were gray zones, there would be predators. And as long as there were predators, she would hunt. Mrs. Reese caught her at the bottom of the steps. Commander, wait. Vivian turned. Amy used to write to me, Mrs. Reese said. Every week. Long letters about her life, her dreams, her hopes for the future. She pressed something into Vivian's hand. I want you to have this. Her last letter. The one she sent the week before she died. Vivian looked at the envelope. Worn from handling. Stained with what might have been tears. I can't accept this. Please. Mrs. Reese's voice broke. She wrote about you, not by name. She didn't know who you were. But she wrote about someone she believed would come, someone who would fight for the truth, someone who would make sure her story was told. Vivian opened the envelope, unfolded the letter. The handwriting was neat, careful. The words of someone who knew they might be her last. Mom, something bad is happening here. I can't tell you what because I know they monitor communications, but I want you to know that I'm not giving up. I'm fighting back. I'm gathering evidence, and I believe that someday someone will come. Someone who will listen. Someone who will care enough to tear this whole rotten system down. If something happens to me, please don't be sad. I lived the life I wanted. I served my country. I stood up for what was right. That's all any of us can do. I love you. I love Dad. I love everything you taught me about honor and courage and never backing down. Your daughter Amy Vivian's hands were shaking by the time she finished reading. She looked at Mrs. Reese, at the mother who had lost everything but refused to lose hope. She was right, Vivian said. Someone did come. And now she's at peace, thanks to you. They embraced. Two women who had never met before this trial. Two women bound together by the memory of someone brave enough to fight. When they separated, Mrs. Reese was smiling through her tears. Go, she said. Do what you have to do. Save the next Amy, and the one after that, and the one after that. Vivian nodded. She tucked the letter into her pocket, close to her heart. A reminder of why she fought. Then she walked toward the waiting car, toward the next mission, toward the next gray zone, toward the next predator who needed to learn that the hunters had become the hunted. 6 months after Nathan Rourke's conviction, Vivian Reyes stood in the rain at Arlington National Cemetery. The honor guard moved with mechanical precision. 7 rifles, 3 volleys, 21 shots that echoed across the rolling hills where America's heroes rested. Amy Reese was finally being buried with full military honors. Her coffin, draped in the American flag, sat above the open grave. Her parents stood at the front. Mr. Reese, in his marine dress blues. Mrs. Reese clutching the folded flag they would receive at the ceremony's end. Behind them, a crowd of mourners stretched back across the grass. Survivors from Phoenix. Families of the other women who had been recovered from the desert graves. Military personnel who had never met Amy, but understood what her sacrifice meant. And standing apart from the others, watching from beneath a black umbrella, was Dana Webb. Vivian found her after the ceremony. "You came," Vivian said. "I had to." Dana's voice was steady now, stronger than the terrified woman Vivian had met in that warehouse. "She was my roommate, my friend, and the bravest person I ever knew." "How's the task force?" "Growing. We've identified over 200 buried complaints across all branches, 200 women who were told to stay silent, 200 cases that were resolved internally." Dana's jaw tightened. "We're reopening all of them." "Good. It's not enough. It's never enough. But it's something." They stood together in silence, watching the cemetery workers begin the process of lowering Amy's coffin into the earth. "I read about Pacific Shield," Dana said. "The operation you ran in Thailand, 12 arrests, trafficking network dismantled, 23 women rescued." 18, Vivian corrected quietly. 23 were being held. 18 survived long enough to be rescued. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Be angry. Use that anger to keep fighting." Dana nodded. "There's something I need to tell you," she said. "Something I found in the files last week." Vivian turned to look at her. Amy Reese wasn't the first woman at Phoenix to try to expose what was happening. 3 years before she arrived, there was another. A captain named Elizabeth Morgan. She gathered evidence, documented everything, was about to go public. What happened to her? Helicopter crash, training exercise gone wrong, officially ruled an accident. Dana's voice dropped. "But I found inconsistencies, maintenance records that don't match, witness statements that contradict each other. I think she was murdered. I think they've been doing this for a lot longer than we knew." Vivian felt something cold settle in her stomach. "How long?" "I don't know yet, but the pattern goes back at least a decade, maybe longer, different bases, different contractors, same results. Women who speak up, women who disappear. Send me everything you have." "I will. But Vivian..." Dana hesitated. "Be careful. The people running these operations, they're not just contractors and corrupt officers. They're connected. Powerful. The kind of powerful that can make problems disappear." "I know. I'm serious. After Phoenix, after Rourke's conviction, there are people who want you dead. People who see you as a threat to everything they've built." "Good," Vivian said. "Let them see me coming." The last mourners were leaving now. The cemetery workers waited at a respectful distance to finish their work. Vivian walked to Amy's grave, knelt in the wet grass beside the headstone they had already placed. Private. First class. Amy Elizabeth Reese, United States Army beloved daughter, honored hero. She fought when fighting was hardest. She placed her hand on the cold stone. "I got your letter," she whispered. "Your mom gave it to me. You were right. Someone did come, and I promise you I won't stop. Not until every woman in uniform knows she's not alone. Not until every predator learns there's nowhere left to hide." She stood, wiped the rain from her face. Or maybe it was tears. She couldn't tell anymore. Admiral Cross was waiting at the cemetery entrance. "Commander." "Admiral." "How are you holding up?" "I'm fine." "That's not what I asked." Vivian looked at him. At the man who had believed in her from the beginning, who had sent her into the gray zones when no one else would. "I'm tired," she admitted. "Tired of burying women who shouldn't be dead. Tired of fighting a system that keeps producing the same monsters. Tired of winning battles while the war goes on. Do you want to stop?" She considered the question. Really considered it. "No. I want to win. I want to end this. All of it. Not just one operation at a time, but the whole corrupt structure that allows these things to happen." "That's a big goal." "I have a big gun." Cross almost smiled. "There's been a development, something I need to brief you on. Another operation, something bigger. The intelligence community has been tracking a network, international, well-funded, connected to trafficking operations across 4 continents. We've suspected for years that individual contractor scandals were related, but we couldn't prove it. And now we have proof. The files you recovered from Pacific Shield contained financial records that link to a central organization, shell companies, offshore accounts, a web of corruption that makes Ironclad and Sentinel Force look like amateur hour." Vivian felt her pulse quicken. "Who's running it?" "We don't know yet. The trail leads to a private military corporation called Obsidian Group, headquarters in Geneva, operations in 37 countries, contracts with governments, corporations, international organizations. What do you need me to do?" Cross reached into his jacket, pulled out a folder, handed it to her. "This is everything we have. Intelligence assessments, financial records, operational patterns. It's not enough to take them down. Not yet. We need someone on the inside, someone who can gather evidence, someone who can hunt." "Yes." Vivian opened the folder. Read the first page, then the second. The scope was staggering. Hundreds of operations across decades. Thousands of victims. A criminal enterprise disguised as legitimate business protected by layers of legal and political insulation. "When do I start, Vivian?" Cross's voice was gentle. "This isn't like Phoenix or Pacific Shield. This is a lifetime operation. Deep cover. Minimal support. If you're compromised, there's no extraction team coming. You'll be on your own." "I'm always on my own?" "That's not true. You have people who care about you. People who... Admiral." Vivian closed the folder. "Every day I don't start this mission is another day women are being trafficked. Another day predators are operating with impunity. Another day the system I swore to protect is being corrupted from within." She met his eyes. "I didn't become a SEAL to live a comfortable life. I became a SEAL to protect people who can't protect themselves. That's what I'm going to keep doing. Until I can't do it anymore." Cross studied her face for a long moment. "Your father would be proud of you." The words hit her like a physical blow. Her father, Master Chief William Reyes, killed in action in Fallujah when she was 16. The man who had taught her to shoot, to fight, to never back down from a bully. The man whose death had driven her to enlist, to become the warrior she was. "He taught me that some things are worth dying for," she said quietly. "This is one of them." Cross nodded. "You ship out in 72 hours. Geneva first. Then wherever the trail leads," He paused. And Vivian, thank you for everything you've done. Everything you're going to do. She didn't answer, just took the folder and walked to her car. 72 hours. Time enough to say goodbye. The house in Virginia Beach looked exactly as Vivian remembered it. Small, white. A garden in the front that her mother tended with the same precision she'd once applied to military logistics. Maria Reyes opened the door before Vivian could knock. I saw you on the news, she said. The trial, the testimony, all of it. Mom? Come inside. You look like you haven't slept in a week. Vivian followed her mother into the kitchen, sat at the same table where she'd eaten breakfast as a child, watched her mother pour 2 cups of coffee without asking if she wanted one. You're leaving again? Maria said. Not a question. How did you know? You have your father's eyes, the same look he got right before every deployment, like you're already somewhere else in your mind. Vivian wrapped her hands around the coffee cup, let the warmth seep into her fingers. This one's different, she said. Longer, more dangerous. I might not— Don't. Maria's voice was sharp. Don't tell me you might not come back. Your father said that once, right before Fallujah. I've spent 16 years regretting that I let him finish that sentence. Mom, you deserve to know. I know enough. Maria sat across from her, reached out, took Vivian's hands. I know you're doing something important. I know you're saving lives. I know you're the kind of person who can't stand by while others suffer. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. I also know you're my daughter. My only child. The last piece of your father I have left. And every time you walk out that door, a part of me dies until you walk back in. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be careful. Be smart. Come home. Vivian squeezed her mother's hands. I'll try. Trying isn't good enough. Maria's grip tightened. Promise me. Promise me you'll come home. I can't promise that. You know I can't. Then promise me something else. What? Promise me that whatever you're doing, whoever you're fighting, you won't lose yourself. You won't become the monster you're hunting. You'll stay my Vivian, my little girl who used to catch fireflies in the backyard and believed the world was full of magic. Vivian felt tears sliding down her cheeks, didn't try to stop them. I promise, she whispered. I promise I won't forget who I am. They held each other for a long time. Mother and daughter, 2 women who had already lost so much and might lose more. When Vivian finally stood to leave, Maria pressed something into her hand. Your father's dog tags. I was saving them for when you got married, had children, some normal milestone that normal people reach. Mom, take them. He would have wanted you to have them. He would have been so proud of who you became. Vivian looked at the tags. William Michael Reyes, Master Chief, U.S. Navy. The metal was worn from years of handling. Her mother must have held them every day, every night. A physical connection to the man she'd loved and lost. Thank you. Maria kissed her forehead. Go. Do what you have to do. Save whoever needs saving. And then come home. Come home to me. Vivian walked to the door. Stopped. Turned back. I love you, Mom. I love you too, Mija. Always. The door closed behind her. Vivian stood on the porch for a moment, feeling the weight of the dog tags in her pocket, the weight of the promise she'd made. Then she walked to her car, climbed in, started the engine. Geneva was waiting. The flight to Switzerland took 9 hours. Vivian spent them reading the intelligence files Cross had given her, memorizing names, faces, operational patterns, building a mental map of the organization she was about to infiltrate. Obsidian Group, founded in 1998 by a consortium of former military and intelligence officers from 6 countries. Official business private security risk assessment, corporate protection. Unofficial business human trafficking weapons, smuggling political assassination, and the systematic corruption of institutions across 4 continents. At the center of it all was a man named Victor Harlan, former CIA, decorated operative. Left the agency in 2003 under unclear circumstances. Built Obsidian into one of the largest private military corporations in the world. Personal net worth estimated at $3 billion. He was the spider at the center of the web. And Vivian was going to take him down. Her cover identity was carefully constructed. Margaret Sullivan, corporate security consultant, former Army MP with an honorable discharge and a talent for discretion. Looking for work with an organization that valued competence over conscience. She landed in Geneva just after dawn, checked into a hotel near the lake, changed into business attire that looked expensive but forgettable. Then she went hunting. The first contact came 3 days later. A man named Pierce, mid-40s, British accent, the kind of smooth professionalism that came from years of lying for a living. Miss Sullivan, I've reviewed your credentials. Impressive work in the Middle East. Thank you. We have a position available. Entry level, risk assessment and client management. Nothing too strenuous. I'm not looking for strenuous. I'm looking for well paid. Pierce smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Obsidian rewards loyalty and discretion. Can you be discreet, Miss Sullivan? I can be whatever the job requires. Good. Then welcome to the family. He extended his hand. Vivian shook it, the handshake of a woman making a deal with the devil. The weeks that followed were careful, methodical. Vivian worked her way into the organization slowly, did the jobs she was assigned, asked no questions, raised no red flags. She watched. She listened. She documented. The scope of Obsidian's operations was even worse than the intelligence suggested. Human trafficking across 3 continents. Arms deals with terrorist organizations. Assassinations disguised as accidents. And at the heart of it, a network of compromised officials in governments worldwide who protected the operation in exchange for money or leverage. She found evidence of connections to Phoenix, to Pacific Shield, to a dozen other operations that had seemed isolated but were all feeding into the same corrupt machine. And she found something else. Victor Harlan wasn't just running a criminal enterprise. He was building an empire. A shadow government that existed parallel to legitimate institutions. An organization that could make or break political careers, start or stop wars, control the flow of money and power across the globe. He was the most dangerous man Vivian had ever hunted. And she was standing right next to him. The invitation came on a Thursday evening. Miss Sullivan, Mr. Harlan would like to see you. Vivian kept her face neutral. Of course, now. She followed the messenger through corridors she'd never seen, past security checkpoints that required biometric verification, into the heart of Obsidian's headquarters. Victor Harlan's office occupied the entire top floor of the Geneva Tower. He stood by the window when she entered, tall, silver-haired, the kind of man who radiated authority the way a furnace radiates heat. Miss Sullivan, please, sit. She sat. I've been watching you, he said. You're different from the others. More careful. More controlled. I believe in doing the job right. So do I. He turned to face her. His eyes were cold, calculating. That's why I'm concerned. Concerned about what? About who you really are. Vivian's heart rate stayed steady. Her breathing stayed even. But inside, every nerve was screaming. I don't understand. I think you do. Harlan walked toward her, slowly, deliberately. Margaret Sullivan is a very convincing identity. Excellent documentation. Solid backstory. The kind of cover that takes years to build. He stopped in front of her chair. But I have resources that most governments don't. I have access to information that's supposed to be impossible to find. And those resources tell me that Margaret Sullivan doesn't exist. Vivian didn't move. So I'm going to ask you once, Harlan continued. Who are you, and who sent you? The silence stretched between them. Vivian had two choices. Maintain the cover. Hope he was bluffing. Try to talk her way out. Or tell the truth. She chose option 3. Her hand moved to the concealed weapon at her ankle. In one fluid motion, she had the pistol drawn aimed at Harlan's head. My name is Lieutenant Commander Vivian Reyes, United States Navy Special Warfare, and I'm here to end you. Harlan didn't flinch, didn't react at all. I know who you are, Commander. I've known since the moment you walked into my building. He smiled. The question is, did you really think you could take down Obsidian by yourself? Doors opened behind her. Armed men flooded in. Weapons trained on her from every direction. Lower your weapon, Harlan said, or die where you sit. Vivian looked at the men surrounding her, at the guns pointed at her head, at the man who thought he had won. Then she lowered her pistol. Good. Harlan took the weapon from her hand. Now, let's discuss what happens next. Vivian met his eyes. What happens next is that you go to prison, along with everyone who works for you. Harlan laughed. And how exactly do you plan to accomplish that? You're alone. Outnumbered. Your cover is blown. Your weapon is gone. In 30 seconds you'll be dead, and no one will ever know what happened. You're right about one thing, Vivian said. I am alone. But I haven't been working alone. She smiled. Check your systems. Harlan's expression flickered. The first crack in his confidence. He gestured to one of his men. Sir? The man was staring at his tablet. His face had gone pale. Sir, we have a problem. What kind of problem? Every file on our servers, financial records, operational data, personnel files, it's all been copied, transmitted. We tried to stop it, but transmitted where? The man looked up. Everywhere. FBI, Interpol, MI6, every major law enforcement and intelligence agency in the world. It's been going out for the past 6 months. Everything we have, everything we've done, all of it. Harlan's face went white. That's impossible. Your security had a leak, Vivian said. Me. Every document I touched, every system I accessed, every piece of information I gathered, it was all being transmitted in real time to federal servers. She leaned forward. You were so busy trying to figure out who I was that you never noticed what I was doing. And now every crime you've ever committed, every person you've ever hurt, every life you've ever destroyed, it's all on record. Permanent, undeniable, the kind of evidence that can't be buried or erased. Harlan's hands were shaking. The carefully constructed confidence was crumbling. Kill her, he said. None of the men moved. I said kill her. They're not going to kill me, Vivian said calmly. Because they know that in about 30 seconds, this building is going to be surrounded by every law enforcement agency in Switzerland, and anyone who pulls a trigger is going to spend the rest of their life in a cell. Right on cue, the sound of helicopters filled the air, sirens in the distance getting closer. The men around her exchanged looks, weapons lowered. It's over, Harlan, Vivian said. You built an empire on suffering. You got rich off the pain of innocent people. And now you're going to spend whatever's left of your life knowing that a woman half your age brought it all down. She stood, walked toward him. Remember Amy Reese? Probably not. She was just one of thousands of victims your network created. But she was brave enough to fight back. Brave enough to die trying to expose the truth. She was face to face with him now. I made her a promise. I told her I would tear down every system that protected predators like you. This is me keeping that promise. The doors burst open. Federal agents flooded in. Swiss police, Interpol officers, a coordinated strike that had been planned for months. Harlan was handcuffed. His men were arrested. The empire he had spent decades building was dismantled in a matter of minutes. Vivian watched it all with quiet satisfaction. Admiral Cross appeared at her side. You did it, he said. You actually did it. We did it. Everyone who spoke up. Everyone who testified. Everyone who refused to accept that this was just how the world worked. What now? Vivian looked out the window. At the city below. At the world that was a little bit safer than it had been an hour ago. Now we find the next predator. And the one after that. And the one after that. Until there are no more gray zones. Until every woman in uniform knows she's not alone. Until justice isn't just a word we use in speeches, but something we actually deliver. She turned to face him. This isn't the end, Admiral. This is just the beginning. Cross nodded. Then let's get to work. 1 year later, Vivian Reyes stood at the podium of the United Nations General Assembly. Behind her, a screen displayed the faces of the women she had fought for. Amy Reese, Maya Ortiz, Elizabeth Morgan, and hundreds of others whose names were finally being spoken aloud. These women, Vivian said, her voice echoing through the chamber, were soldiers, civilians, refugees, mothers and daughters and sisters. They came from different countries, different backgrounds, different circumstances, but they all had one thing in common. They were failed by systems that should have protected them. She paused. Today, that changes. Today, we commit to building a world where no woman has to fight alone, where speaking up is not a death sentence, where the uniform means something, where justice is not a privilege reserved for the powerful, but a right guaranteed to all. She looked out at the assembled delegates, at the leaders who had the power to change things. I spent 15 years hunting predators in the gray zones of the world. I found them in military bases and corporate offices and government buildings. I found them wherever power existed without accountability. And I learned something important. Her voice hardened. Evil doesn't flourish because bad people are strong. Evil flourishes because good people are silent, because systems are built to protect institutions instead of individuals, because we accept injustice as inevitable instead of fighting to change it. She gripped the podium. I'm asking you today to stop accepting. Stop tolerating. Stop looking the other way. Be the person who speaks up. Be the person who fights back. Be the person who refuses to let another woman die in silence. She stepped back from the microphone. Amy Reese died trying to expose the truth. Maya Ortiz died believing no one would listen. Elizabeth Morgan died fighting a system that was designed to crush her. Her voice dropped. They deserved better. We all deserve better. And it starts with us. Today, now, in this room, in this moment. The assembly rose to its feet. The applause was thunderous. Vivian stood in the center of it, thinking about the promise she had made to Amy Reese's mother, to Dana Webb, to her own mother. to every woman who had trusted her with their stories. The fight wasn't over, would never be truly over. But today, the hunters had won. And tomorrow, they would keep hunting. Because somewhere in the world, in a gray zone, no one was watching. A woman was being told to stay silent. A woman was being threatened for speaking up. A woman was wondering if anyone would ever come. And Vivian Reyes would always come. That was her promise, her purpose, her legacy. In the gray zones of the world, where predators once thought they ruled, a new kind of justice had arrived. Justice that didn't ask permission. Justice that didn't give warnings. Justice that drew first and asked questions later. And the predators had finally learned the truth. The hunters had become the hunted. And they would never be safe again.